Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great start to your week. Starting to get a little nicer out there. That is much appreciated, I'm quite sure. Last week, winter came rushing back and punched us in the face. Not a problem though, it is still February in Alberta. We are hearty and we do what we need to do. I'm going to jump into it. We got a busy week this week. Tomorrow, regular council meeting, 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, the 25th, starting at 3 o'clock, we have a special meeting agenda, a special meeting. It is the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendments to create a new direct control zone. Again, that starts at 3 o'clock. And if we're not done or we don't see an end by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening, we will carry it over and we're slated to start 9 a.m. on the 26th. Ideally, we're getting as much opportunity as possible for anybody to get in and share your thoughts. I'll go through the agenda for tomorrow and discuss a few key points, give you a high level, and then I'll dive back into the deeper points. On the consent agenda, again, the consent agenda is items that we think are pretty straightforward and don't require a bunch of explanation and move forward. There is one in this consent agenda that I'm going to motion to pull out. Some of the other councillors and I have been talking about this electric utility MCC stage 2 implementation. It's item 2.4 on the consent agenda, and we're not we don't really want it going forward quite yet, some of us, and so we'll see what the discussion shapes up around that. I'll talk a bit more about it further down here. There's a bit of things mentioned on 2.2, which is an interesting point. It's called the 2026. It's getting late. Tax sale reserve bids. Oh, and I apologize. I'm looking over here a fair bit, and it's simply because I've had to make quite a few notes. There's so much going on. 2026 tax sale reserve bid. Now, what this is people who are in arrears of taxes for a certain number of years. Quite frankly, the city has to recover their money, and it's a routine legislated step, but some people find it very hard to wrap their heads around it. This allows the city to proceed with the April 9th tax sale and process on time. And then in that document, you've got property description, address, and a reserve bid. And the reserve bid is designed to be fair market value. So this isn't a function of the city's taking someone's house, kicking them out, and keeping it. It goes up for auction. It has a reserve that is at fair market value, but the intent is they have to get their money for the taxes. So it sounds like a lot, and I would have to say that I couldn't imagine being in that place. However, at the same time, I do understand due process, and that needs to carry on. Item 2.3, municipal election review and Bill 20 impacts. Bill 20 was where the amendments from the Local Authorities Election Act came in, and that's what pushed on the hand count ballots and integrity controls, which integrity controls are great. The hand counting for us ended up being really quite a bother. They had to go through an elaborate process to make sure that they're counting right. It's not like we've got zones where you can just say, oh, everybody in this zone, they voted for this person, off you go and you stack them. All over the city, every single ballot could likely have a different combination of councillors that they voted for. The mayor is easy enough. That was nice and straightforward. That's why they got those results fairly quick. And then I know some people ran into problems and issues. Folks who went through the early voting got through real quick. The day of, there was big lineups. People ended up not even being able to. So ideally, we're going to learn and carry some stuff forward. I'll go a little deeper here on item 2.4. The electrical utility municipally controlled corporation implementation of stage 2. So the scope here is the last council directed city staff to go down the path of becoming an MCC, moving our electrical utilities to an MCC. Now, right, what we are finding is a couple of councillors, and we had talked about this, some of us campaigned on it. We aren't happy with the lack of information about the other two main options. Those being divest, i.e. sell to somebody, or keep it, put in your asset integrity plan, your asset improvement plan, and try to get it up to where it can be at the level that we know we need. We know we have some issues with age of the utilities, age of the facilities. All of that, everybody's fully aware of. So now let's look at the three side by side with a proper net present value calculation over 15, 20 years, where we can actually see what's going to happen. Now that gives us a good economic lens. It's not the only requirement for this decision. The requirement for the decision comes down to affordability for the people of Red Deer, the long-term updates and improvements to the system, and of course, again, to me, economic viability. It always ends up being my first go-to, and then I pull myself into a couple other realms. Item 3.1, governance of Red Deer's greater downtown. The decision and immediate ask here is council is being asked to direct administration to return with the terms of reference and a draft budget for a committee of council to provide governance and strategic direction for the downtown area. This is essentially, what are we going to do about the DBA folding up and moving on? Now, it's a big deal. It's actually a bigger deal than maybe it seems like on paper, because for two reasons. One, greater downtown governance is super critical. We all know that. We've got the drive team, the economic development committee, and we want to see how those are going to play together and ideally build up the city of Red Deer. That's ultimately the main point. We want downtown to be viable, robust, an amazing place to go. A few steps higher than perhaps it is now. My concern with this is, as I'll always say, you have to be very, very careful that you keep governance here, operations here. And this sort of leans itself towards a possibility of a few steps in all of a sudden you're into governance or into operations from governance, sorry. We'll see. We'll talk about it and we'll get more details. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be directing the operations. We will be looking at the bigger picture. Here is your goal and here is your budget. And then it's nose in, fingers out, don't touch. That's what I'm hoping for. There is item 4.1, the offsite levy bylaw and rate update. We gave first reading previously, and we're now considering second and third readings. The report describes the offsite levies for sanitary, stormwater, and roadways with updated rates, and there's a schedule in there. I'm not going to bore you with it. Now, these offsite levy charges are paid by developers when they're developing or subdividing land. and the funds are held for use against growth-related infrastructure that benefits municipal developments. It's ultimately, when we looked at it the first time, looks good. Doesn't look like a crazy amount, and I don't think. I'm just checking my notes here real quick. I don't think we've heard any real pushback on this one. So again, I wanted to explain it a little bit. It was something that I had to dive into to understand it better. And then we're going to talk about the Mayor's Recognition Awards. So we'll see what that is. Again, it's like we talk about, there are plenty of other awards, and oftentimes what happens is the Mayor's Recognition Awards have fallen into athletics or, education or different arts and programs. Realistically, it's just saying that, these people won the top, I don't know, volleyball player at RDP. Okay, we're going to recognize the top athletes again, which isn't, there's nothing wrong with recognizing people multiple times. However, we might want to look at categories like distinguished volunteer service and community builders and those sort of folks who don't often get the recognition that they rightfully deserve. That is, so, that's a lot. And I tried to race through it because, again, I don't want to keep holding these things for so long. And then I will talk again really quickly before I go about the 3 p.m. on the 25th. Come on out. We want to hear you. We've had tons of emails, tons of interaction. It's been very eye-opening. The special meeting agenda, when you go through it, if you were so inclined, I would have to say there are some people who have. There's a lot of people who this is very, very critical to. There's business owners in the area. There are the homeless clients. There are the people who work with the homeless groups in various, departments, organizations. And we're finding that the people of the Pines, because that's the neighborhood that is closest in proximity to this area, have been quite vocal about what they want to see and don't want to see. Ultimately, this reading, it's not a reading, this hearing is going to hear about establishing that direct control zone, which would allow for the homeless shelter to be relocated, operated by the provincial operator. They were selected back quite a while ago, Hope Mission, and in conjunction with the Red Deer Homeless Society. So there are quite a few moving parts. This is not something that we can jump into. And again, I said Homeless Society. It's the Red Deer Homeless Foundation. And we can't jump into this. We've got to be very careful. We've got to be very well thought out, and we've got to listen. We've got to listen to the community. We're talking about what matters to, obviously there's concentric rings of impact here. There's the folks that we're talking about helping, and nobody has disputed that we need to help people. Then there's the operators of the various organizations and the community that's right there. And then you've got the Pines community, and then you've got the greater city. And there's something that I hope everybody understands and keeps in mind. I was elected by the people of Red Deer to look after Red Deer. And as I'm going through this, I'm risk assessing. I have a background in incident control, incident command, risk assessments, and I'm doing a risk assessment on each main thing that I can come up with. It's not the best option for a risk assessment to do it in isolation. However, right now, I feel like I need to address and review and flag any risks that I can. I'm not sharing that with anybody else because that would be potentially unfair. And unfair, there's the whole principle of information that I would have, or that maybe one or two people would have that not everybody gets. So unless it was widely accepted, it wouldn't be submitted anyway. And it's really important to remember that when a person does a risk assessment, you don't do a risk assessment to justify a decision. You do a risk assessment to make a decision. And that's where I'm going with it. So, and at the same time, taking everybody's input, I have to do what I believe is best for the city of Red Deer. And that involves as many people as we can. And we know for a fact that issues like this, they're tough, they're emotional, there's emotion tied to it, and there's actually some economics tied to it. It's got a lot of moving parts, and I do promise that I'm doing my best to communicate and listen as much as possible. All right, that was a long one. I know it, but there's a lot to unpack this week. I look forward to seeing everybody that could possibly make it. We will extend it if on the 25th at 3 o'clock we get rolling. If we get close to 9:30, 10 o'clock and we're not wrapping up, we know there's a lot more to go on. We're slated for the 26th at 9 o'clock to come back. So by all means, come on out. It could be a long night. Nothing wrong with that. That's what we're here for. And then if it rolls into the next day, excellent. I do not want to go into this without as much information as possible. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you and have a terrific week.